Well, that's what.
Alright everybody, this is your 5-minute warning. We're going to get rolling in about 5 minutes. So, finish those conversations, grab your snacks, your drinks, and get ready to find a seat because we're going to go in about 5 minutes. so welcome everybody to the Rossland Museum and Discovery Centre. So glad to see all of you guys here today. I want to start out by acknowledging that we live and work on the unceded Sinai-Stmulau, or homeland, if you don't know Sinsashin. And the thing I'd like to share with you guys today, I think it's pretty fitting, being that we're here to hear all about some mountain biking and some serious wins through that. And we're on a mountain that has no shortage of mountain biking opportunities. That mountain has a name. That name is Camarkin. So what I'd like you guys to do is to join me in just a few moments practicing that word, because if you can share that word around, then you guys are going to be a part of Sinai's resurgence and, make us feel really good about the work we're doing here today. So I'll give you guys a quick example again, just because, new language. So the K is like just a K, and then it's Mar and Kin together. So Camarkin. Awesome. Do on count of three again, all together, so everyone has a shot. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Camarkin. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And our shameless plugs before we get rolling here today too. We've got a youth Lionel block printing workshop with Aaron Shuttleworth happening on Saturday. So if you know any youngsters who've got that artistic flair, you're going to want to get them there. And then the next Saturday, we have another workshop with Chris Hatch, mineralogist, a mineral engineer. He'll actually be doing a workshop with youth to do a fluorescent mineral display, as well as some magnetism display, and then an Ask a Mineralogist at the end of it, where you can bring in some of their samples from home, get them to take a look at it, give them some of that information. I know you all are maybe here not to hear me talk, here to hear from someone who's, a bit of a champion, maybe not myself. I guess we'll start off by saying in the few different halls of fame, have to remember them all. So give me just a quick moment. There's the World Mountain Biking Hall of Fame. There is the Canadian Cycling Hall of Fame. And new this year is the BC Sports Hall of Fame. So safe to say, our speaker here tonight, Cindy Devine, is in a whole bunch of halls, and they're all pretty famous. With that though, I just want to give up the floor and let the person you all came here to speak tonight come take it from me. So please, Cindy, do me a favor, come take the floor, and let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Skylar, Sarah, and all the Rossland Museum team for having an interest in BC's mountain bike history and helping me create this presentation. And thank you all for coming and showing your interest. The renaissance of mountain biking in BC was in the 1980s. I stumbled into it in 1987 in Whistler. The press regularly asks me, how did you get from beginner rider to world champion in 3 years? That is the story I want to share tonight. As a graduate in human sciences, the emotional and physical development of humans fascinates me. Here is the story of one human. With chronology, I'll show you the how of it, and the why of it is simply that I believe I was born with a ticket to ride. Clicker. No one knows what a healthy, chubby baby could become. That without a seed of cycling influence in her family or childhood friends, she would become a 3-time mountain bike Hall of Famer. Success has a lot to do with timing, being at the right place at the right time with the right mindset. Excellence, school and university academic habits, managing a horse and all its needs and equipment were already learned habits of focus to detail, commitment, concentration, and practice. Luck. My first bit of luck was having a World War II fighter pilot dad that actually made it home from the war to pass me some of his sturdy DNA. And a lot of being first on a downhill podium is who had the least mistakes that particular race. All of the top contenders might get gold at any race, based often on who made the least errors within that short period of time. Certainly some of my early luck was pure physical and mental strength and endurance to hold onto the rigid bike's bars while it bounced out of control over tough terrain. I was born in 1960 in Nuestra Senora de Coromoto Hospital in Maracaibo. From 1955 to 64, our family lived in the Gulf Oil family camp called Lagunitas and a few other places along Lake Maracaibo. Oops. Later, this generation of post-war North American oil workers and their baby boomer kids, including me, stayed in touch and called themselves the Maracaibo Oil Brats. We grew up with adventurous parents earning considerably good pay in the post-war economic boom and fossil fuel expansion. I was a baby of 4 kids, myself and my next sister born in Maracaibo, and the older 2 born in Vancouver who immigrated with our parents to Venezuela in 1955. How did we get there? My dad had self-enlisted to the war in 1939 at 16 years old for the adventure and career opportunity of going to war. The military offered a much bigger prospect to him than what was available in Vancouver in 1939. My dad was what I'd call a war athlete. He was screened thoroughly with human centrifugal force testing and was chosen to be Air Force capable. Particularly a bomber pilot in the RCAF stationed in Reykjavik, Iceland, to fly east towards France. I heard few stories from him, but one description of the luxury of the Reykjavik Royal Air Force Station because they had unlimited geothermal water for hot bathing. He met my mother at the Reykjavik Officers Club where local Icelandic and Faroese young women were welcomed in. My mother was raised by her grandparents in Tórshavn, Faroe Islands, while her mother, my grandmother, raised another family of her own in Reykjavik. Eventually, my mom as a teenager and young adult would take the ferry from Tórshavn, Faroe Islands to Reykjavik, Iceland, a 5.5-hour sail, stay with her auntie and visit her mother. That is how she met my dad and became a Canadian war bride. There is even more to that story that I won't get into today. I'm impressed that my dad was such a family man and didn't want to take any of the multiple job offers as a commercial pilot for British Airways or KLM or Dutch Airways, all the big ones after the war. He didn't want to be away from his family for long stretches since he had just finished that kind of isolation during the war. So he looked where a family life and good money was in the 50s and took a multi-year employee contract with Gulf Oil of Venezuela. There were tarantulas, iguanas, giant centipedes, and a pet ocelot in our neighborhood and surroundings. I show this part of my life because I believe that for all kids, unusual environments that challenge attention, awareness, and learning create the epigenetics of strong resilience and capacity for change, fear management, and adaptation. All skills that allow excelling in a new sport with no how-to manual, and of course ease with challenges of traveling internationally. I spent my summers in the Faroe Islands, and they were a huge influence on my life, primarily during my formative years from 1962 to 1986. These were more seeds cultivated for becoming a trail cyclist and an international competitor of future. My cousins and I had hours of freedom to run and play on cliff edge trails and overhangs. This comfort with sheep trail single track exposure provided more foundational skills for mountain bike learning and racing. This is the grindadreib. Grind means whale and dreba means kill. So the grindadreib is a centuries-old practice in the Faroe Islands where entire pods of whales and dolphins are driven ashore and slaughtered. Despite global criticism, this continues with 745 cetaceans killed in 2024 alone. Really hard for me to witness all those summers, yet it was my uncles and my cousins and my own family that were participating. And every family in town would show family. The Faroese revere their whales and put their ribs as entry posts to some island villages. It's more like an indigenous practice of food sourcing, as the grindadreib dates back to the 9th century. At least Greenpeace finally forced them to kill the whale immediately upon shore by severing its C7 cord at the top of its head. This recognition of cultures, different ways of living, acceptance without belief in a practice, adaptation to uncomfortable environments, is a great functional international racing tool. My cousins and I walked across the islands from cliff edge to cliff edge regularly. I just want to show you that cairn, so you would see a cairn in the distance like that to get across the island. It could be quite troubling if the sea fog rolled in because you needed to see way in the distance for the cairns to determine what route to take across the island. They would be east-west and north-south lines of cairns. I reckon this developed my capacity to look ahead at speed over bumpy terrain when I started mountain bike racing. All those summers of walking and running over stony terrain, setting your direction with distant cairns, and scanning short to long distance, is exactly what you need for high-speed technical mountain bike racing. By 1964, we had moved to North Vancouver, and I want to tell you none of these school photos are of me, they're just visual samples because my parents didn't take any photos. Not of sport. This type of gold Mustang was the first bike I remember, and mine was sparkle fleck gold with gold fleck streamers off the handle ends. It's funny because my ticket to ride had a desire for gold even before I knew what a gold medal was. I rode it everywhere in Pemberton Heights, Capilano River, as well as commuting to school daily and roaring around the neighborhood and through the ancient cedar lot trails that existed in this area of Upper West Keith Road. I was a member of Capilano Winnow Club and only recall a short stint of figure skating. I wasn't very inspired or motivated, probably not naturally good at it, but I know as a champion of balancing on a rigid bike, when it's moving, that having learned to balance on a skating blade would have been helpful. My dad provided us with a trampoline in Maracaibo, which is very modern thinking in 1960, and again through elementary school in North Van. We had a perfect flat backyard facing the waters of Burrard Inlet, Stanley Park, Kitts, and Jericho. I had no idea how lucky I was for that huge yard, the massive trampoline, stellar view while I was bouncing and somersaulting with my friends and cousins. Trampolining is an incredible tool for kids and adults. It develops muscular and cardiac strength, promotes balance and coordination via visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive feedback. Look at the explosive plyometric power development one gets too. These are all tools for mountain bike racing, both cross-country and downhill. By 1973, we'd moved from Vancouver to Ruskin, which is between Maple Ridge and Mission in the valley. We moved from the city to the boonies. And from riding my Mustang bike to school, I was now riding a 45-minute bus ride each way to school. I had hours of Stave Lake log boom walking, which is more body balance development, cross-country team activity in all track and field sports, even javelin, long jump, and hurdles. These are all physical strength and endurance and explosive anaerobic sprint training capacity activities. Again, no surprise, all beneficial for mountain bike racing, which was something far ahead in my future. High school sports, I was on the basketball, volleyball, field hockey, tennis, and rugby teams. Our high school, Garibaldi High School, provided such talented and committed coaches with plenty of practice time and space. We even had a tennis court on the school grounds. Both my parents, born in the 1920s, had little enthusiasm for their kids in school sports, or even beyond, when I was an adult in the national team, World Cup, and world champion. They just kept asking me when I was going to stop cycling and settle down. I want to talk to you about stirrups and pedals. Stirrups started with my own pony on our 10-acre farm. I learned to care for the horse and stop, tack up safely, and ride my horse as a neighborhood commute. Ruskin was full of interconnecting double tracks, so I never had to be on the road. Dad let me join the 4-H club, which was a good 20-minute horse ride each way, and I would jump practice in an arena regularly. But by grade 10, with all my babysitting earnings, I was able to buy my own Chimo 10-speed and go further than my horse could take me. This 10-speed afforded me way more distance commuting. I would now ride on the roads and highways from Ruskin to English Bay and back just for a day's entertainment. Apparently that's 136 kilometers round trip. As a 15-year-old, I could find no one who wanted to do this with me. I was so enthusiastic about the independence afforded me through cycling that I was happy to continue on my own adventures. My parents had no idea I was off for these weekend days doing this. Sometimes the police cars would pull me over on the number 1 freeway from Pitt Meadows to Vancouver and tell me to get down onto the low-heat highway instead. I believe the practice of standing on one's saddle stirrups to trot, canter, gallop, jump was a huge advantage when it came to learning how to descend a rigid mountain bike over rough terrain. By standing on my bike pedals like stirrups, I could just hold on with strong hands as the bike rattled beneath me. As mountain bike coaches, we often tell beginners to get off the couch and stand up on their pedals, the couch being their bike saddle. So as a teenage equestrian, I had that skill well developed already. Even the ability to lean on your horse side to side and fore aft is the same as on a mountain bike or a snowmobile or enduro bike. These are similar and transferable skills. I want to talk about right brain activities because all of that other stuff is left brain motor skills. So from grade 1 to 12, I remained involved in drama and choir club, and I still love to sing. Apparently, these right brain activities positively impact spatial memory skills. This visual spatial processing, creative thinking, pattern recognition, and spatial awareness cultivated in the right brain would have assisted my capacity to see race lines, to change a line on the fly in a race or a qualifying run, to see beyond the obstacles that appear on a race course suddenly in real time. Mountain biking at speed on varied terrain would benefit from this right brain skill, let alone the skills from learning to be an actor in plays. We all have different selves that have to act out parts of our life. We have the home self, the work self, some of you the parent self, and the athlete in competition and training self. We all know life is an act, and having had that skill as a kid might have helped me along the way. So my mentors, there were no mentors in sports for me. I had heard of Martina Navratilova and Nadia Comaneci, but I had no dream to be like them. My heroines were Mary Tyler Moore, That Girl, and The Flying Nun. Does anyone familiar with that? These were strong, independent career women competing with men in their jobs and overall lives. What they were doing for themselves and for others as women of the world inspired me to be my best, get beyond setbacks, and forge ahead with any dreams that surfaced for me. One of those dreams was knowing I wanted to be a rehab medicine therapist at 14 years old. I had no bike racing dreams. So we're moving on to my second year at UBC in 1978, and I had a tiny Jericho Beach apartment. I became a Jericho Sailing Club member, and I learned windsurfing. It's one design windsurfing in Burrard Inlet, big board and sail, heavy retractable rudder, nothing like what we use now. If you dropped your sail, it was a straining, bent over at the hip, pulling on a huge, heavy, wet sail, balancing the amount of counter back lean to get it out of the water without falling off yourself. Experience. Has anyone done the one design trip? This was more learning balance, push-pull power, general endurance with brute strength that I know assisted my transition to fast downhill cycling over rough terrain. I realize now that the three-dimensional nature of equestrian sport and windsurfing helped me excel quickly as a beginner mountain biker. There is a three-dimensional nature to all these sports where 2 or 3 separate objects are moving in unison together. The cycle tour photo on the right was my first cycle camping tour with some of my UBC Rehab Med colleagues who invited me along to learn how to do it. This was 1980, and we cycled Prince Rupert to Vancouver. I suddenly found a new recreational sport, cycle touring. And you can see we didn't wear helmets. We didn't have chamois, no gloves. It was a very different world. So between 1981 and 1987, I became a cycle touring fanatic, and I cycled across Canada from Newfoundland to Vancouver with a major crash in the middle in Saskatchewan, and then across the South Pacific Islands, including Hawaii, Fiji, Cook Islands, and New Zealand. But I parked in New Zealand for 3 years because I adored the place, from 1984 to 1987. And from there, I would take trips to Asia, volcano and trail trekking, and summer cycle touring Europe. I ended up cycling across Europe just after Chernobyl blew up. Talk about cycle endurance development. In the early racing days, downhills were long. They were 7 to 15 minutes. Now they're more in the 2 to 3 minute length. And our cross-country races were long. Women were doing over 2 hours at race pace. So a lot of endurance required in those days. And I know that all those years of cycle touring created a rider that could tackle the physical requirements of mountain bike racing. Then I moved to Whistler in 1987. I'd left New Zealand and returned to Vancouver for a winter visit and ended up in Whistler and met Greg Stone, Dilly. He taught me how to ride a rigid mountain bike. The spring after, he taught me how to ski steep Blackcomb Powder. In 1987, they had just opened the whole Blackcomb Resort Mountain, and it was easy to lap powder runs. The die-hard Whistler skiers weren't interested in Blackcomb yet. He helped me get my first Rocky Mountain Discovery bike with the big bull moose bars. There were mostly gravel alpine roads to explore and occasional single track, always no helmet and sometimes no shirt. And that summer of 1987, Jim McConkey Sports Shop sponsored a team, and I was a beginner racer, and this was our little team that we started racing with. So I think there's Dilly right there, and me, and if anyone knows Lumpy, he's a character of his own, bless his soul. I just wanted to show this bit about the brakes, because we went from cantilever road to cantilever mountain bikes, then we went from U-brake to V-brake, and finally to the disc brake. And most of my career was without disc brakes or rear suspension, and half of my career without front suspension. So all this is quite the experience in wet conditions. So those who've entered mountain biking with disc brakes have no imagination of what it was like. So this is just a slide of the journey from beginner in 1987 with those bull moose bars on that Rocky Mountain Discovery to the 1990 with Klein bicycles and 1991 with Kona. So now I want to show you this racing video because we have it, and it does show the type of racing we did in the beginning, often an uphill, a downhill, a slalom, and a cross country all at once in the one event, and of course most racers did all formats on the same bike.
From the Kelso Conservation Area in Milton, Ontario, the Canadian Tire Mountain Bike Championships. Hello everyone, I'm Jerry Dobson. And what a fascinating day of off-road cycling we have lined up for you. 3 major events. The big event of the day is the Pro-Am, featuring some of the best off-road cyclists in the world, including the current world champion Ned Overend. We have the Dual Downhill, which is an event that resembles pro slalom in skiing. And the first event of the day is the uphill sprint. Working with me today, a former world cycling champion, Gord Singleton. And let's check in with Gord now for a few words on today's race.
I'm at the base of the ski hill here at Glen Eden. It's the start of the uphill sprint. It's a mass start event. The riders have to negotiate the slippery climb to the top of the hill, with the winner being the first one over the finish line, unless he puts his foot down, at which point he's immediately disqualified.
So here we go. There will be 2 races. The women are up first, followed by the men. There are 5 women in this race, and away they go up this very steep hill. And 2 of them have broken away. That is Cindy Devine, number 27, and Lisa Hewitt, number 30. So it looks like they are breaking away slightly here in this very steep hill, Gord.
The key here is to start out really fast and strong, get your legs going, keep the momentum. As as the race gets steeper and steeper up the climb, it's hard, and once you lose momentum, to keep the speed going. You see the girls here, they're pushing and pulling on the pedals as hard as they can, just trying to keep it going to the top.
And that camera angle there showed you just how steep it was as the two of them go up here. That is Lisa Buick on the left, Cindy Devine on the right, and they are neck and neck right here in the very steep part of this hill. And oh, there, Lisa Buick, a problem for her. She slipped out of the toe strap there, and she could be in trouble. It's forced her off the course. She has lost the momentum, and it is now up to Cindy Devine. This race is hers, and she wants it.
Well, there's no way at this point in the race that Lisa Buick can come back after pulling her foot up. It looks like Cindy Devine is going to take it all the way to the top. We can see her struggling, but she's staying on top of the pedals. The key is to push and push and push, not to give up the momentum. She's taking it all the way to the finish here.
Cindy Devine, a Canadian girl for the Rocky Mountain team. She's going to win this race. Lisa Buick. Was it easier today? I mean, the conditions are pretty good, I guess.
Oh, great. I was toying whether I was going to gear up for the steep bit, but I went in my lowest. It was a good idea.
And we've just seen them come up this hill en masse, and now we'll see them go down the hill two at a time. The next race of the day is the dual downhill. And Gord, I guess it's a lot like a pro slalom event in skiing.
Yes, the riders not only have to negotiate the steepness of the hill, they have to go in and out of the poles where it's very, very slippery. The rider moving on to the next round is the one who can negotiate the fastest time over the two runs.
So we pick it up with the women's final, and you were looking at Cindy Devine, the winner of the women's uphill sprint. Her opponent in this final is Elodie Brown, and so they're just about set. There they go, and they have to be very careful not to miss those poles, Gord.
And we see how steep the hill is in the race on the uphill portion, now going down at a faster speed. Bike handling is a real key factor here. They have to stay back on the saddle, keeps their center of gravity back on the pedals, allows them to take these turns at a higher rate of speed.
And they're very tentative in the upper portion of the hill, but they pick up the speed now. You can see Cindy is opening up a lead here as she really is coming down. She almost loses it right there, but she keeps on the bike and she wins the first run. And so now they go back up the hill and they'll do it all over again, and the woman with the lowest total time will be the winner. And of course they change sides for the second run here, so it evens out. So that is Elodie Brown closest to the camera in this one.
Well, if there ever is a difference between racing on one side or the other, they split it up. Each one has a chance at the left and the right. It looks like they're even at this portion of the hill.
Very close in the upper portion of the hill, as they are very tentative there. It is very steep, so they have to be cautious. But you'll see as they get closer to the bottom, that is when they start to move. And Cindy Devine is starting to move once again. So this is very close, but Cindy Devine is in front. And there she is opening it up right now, and she wins it again. So Cindy Devine is the winner of the dual downhill. This afternoon.
That was Elodie. If you guys know Elodie, she's way more famous than I am. But she was like 17 years old. Okay, so I wanted to talk about women's media, because sometimes women complain about not getting enough coverage, and I found that the magazines for mountain biking were very interested in the women of early mountain bike racing. We were an odd bunch of characters, us female trailblazers, and there was no internet media to promote or follow a sponsored rider. You relied on the magazine editors and the photographers to decide if they liked you or not, and whose career they would follow. These are some articles and advertising from my various sponsors. So at one point, you can see I'm on a Kona Hey Hey there, but with the Kona stickers on a Marzocchi bike, because Kona hadn't figured out how to build the full suspension bike yet. It was very much a time of transition, as you all know. So bar ends still rocked even in downhill in the era that I was there. And that's Rishi Grewal, if you guys know historic racing fellas, that we both were sponsored by bar end people, Anza. And then this fork was called an RST. I don't even know if they have them anymore. But I was sponsored by them, so I did have to use it. But it was a very scary first edition fork that I had to race with, very laterally flimsy and unreliable. And I think that a firm front fork was actually more safe and predictable cornering. But those were the times where you were paid to ride what you had to ride, and you didn't really have a choice. So this was fun when Els and I won the first gold and silver medal for Canada in 1990. It was really a special time, and you can just see Elodie so happy beside me. She only lost to me by less than a second. And when I talk about the winner making the least mistakes that race, this is what I mean. Of course, in downhill racing, it's hundredths of a second for skiing, but she was the closest to me, and she could have got the gold. And I just want to tell a little story about that fateful race when I talk about making the least mistakes. I was on a rough section of the course, and we all had toe straps, so you never knew when your foot was going to fly out of your toe strap. And my foot flew out of my toe strap. And it's really hard when your toe strap's hitting the ground to flip it up and get your foot back in it, if any of you remember toe straps. So you're going at high speed over rough terrain, and I couldn't get my foot back in the clip. And it, of course, felt like minutes. And a voice was saying in my head, Cindy, you've lost the race. Cindy, you've lost the race. Cindy. All of a sudden, another voice just whispered very quietly, you can do this, Cindy. And in a minute, boom, my foot was in the pedal. I took off, and lucky for me, I won by 0.4 seconds. Like, it could have gone any way. So it's just an example of, it's really the luck of the draw. I got my foot in time, and I would have been silver at the very most if I hadn't. This is a picture of the downhill race, so you can see the goofy clothing that we wore, and you can see my toe straps on the side. And the gold medal Klein bike is on the right, the bike that I won on. And I think it might have been hanging somewhere. I don't know where that photo came from. So at the September Worlds, myself and my Klein teammate Penny were both told to use our fully rigid Klein Attitude bikes for the gold medal race. And that bike, you weren't able to put any other fork in the front fork. You had to use the fork that came with it. But Paul Turner of RockShox had developed the first 2-inch RSI fork, and he wanted to install it on as many bikes as he could for the Worlds that week. So Penny and I broke our Klein sponsorship agreement, and we had that RSI fork installed on our Klein Rascal model bikes, the only Klein bike that you could put that fork on, just the day before the race. And the custom thick aluminum tubing of the Klein would not allow us, so we couldn't even go halfway. We had to use totally a bike that we were not allowed to use. But we had it installed, and by her getting the bronze and me getting the gold, that was enough to keep our jobs and to keep our bonuses for that race. So this is the true Klein Attitude bike that I had to spend a season riding. The big, thick aluminum forks, the flat bars, and skinny little bars. It was a tough ride. They paid me well to ride it, but it was hard to win a race on it, and I did have a few snitty fits along the way. And it's interesting that they found a way to use that bike in an advertisement that thanked me for winning the world. So they found their way to try to advertise the Klein Attitude, even though I hadn't won the worlds on it. This was another article that showed the race bikes of the cross-countryers and the downhill, and it's so funny because you can hardly tell the difference between the bikes. So the top two are the cross-country bikes, and the bottom two are there's my Rascal, and this is HB's, he had the Tioga disc wheel. But look at them, they look so much the same, skinny tubing, let's see, yeah, at least we had the shocks, and the other guys didn't have the shocks for their cross-country. And then they made a big double-page deal of, they were pretty excited about Queen of the Downhill, and, they really gave good media to women. I'm pretty surprised. People were interested, but it was early days. So Klein had told me months prior that I had to race the thick aluminum Attitude Klein. And they said that if I found if it was too rigid, I should just take air out of my tires if I needed a softer ride. They forgot that one of the biggest DNFs on a downhill race was a flat. And so we raced with tires from 28 to 38 PSI, which is huge now. I run 14 in my tires now. But we didn't have I don't even know if we had tape at that point. So a lot of people would get DNFs from flats. So having a huge amount of air in your tires was critical. And I doubt I would have won that gold medal had I been on the Klein attitude. These are just some magazine covers just to show that women had really good media coverage in the early 90s. And you can see here that we finally started getting some good padding. That was in 1993. This is another little clip.
Outside adventure travels to California, where Sam Posey looks at a different kind of racing.
Summer in the mountains. Some of us that means just one thing: mountain biking. It's a new sport, and it's just a decade ago by cyclists who wanted to escape road, noise, and traffic. And now 7 billion of us own mountain bikes. They're amazing machines. They're sturdy frames, fat mountain tires, 21 gears. You go almost anywhere. Many can call it adventure bikes. Of course, some mountain bikers are more adventurous than others. This is mountain bike racing. It is not for the faint of heart nor weak of lung. This is dirty, dusty, bone-jarring work.
Got Shummy, I think.
Big Bear Lake, California, home of Snow Summit Ski Area and the National Mountain Bike Championships. Both the racers have conquered the summit, but what goes up the mountain must also go down. It's time to gather your thoughts, check your equipment, and prepare for the mile-long downhill race.
10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Local amateurs go first. It's steeper than they thought. But mountain bikers are not resilient. The women are up next. Margaret Lownday from Costa Mesa, California, the defending national champion. Sarah Valentine from Breckenridge, Colorado. A fall near the bottom costs her precious second. Lisa Buick from Durango, Colorado. She's the first to beat the 4-minute mark. Chris Holbrook, an amateur, takes the bumpy road to the lead. But it's Cindy Devine from British Columbia who shows the fastest way to the bottom.
I just tried a mountain bike 3 years ago, and in Canadian standards, I was very good. And I thought I was a low climber. That's the funny part about now when I come to America. I'm nowhere near a full climber.
But she wins by 34 seconds.
So then in 1990, we left Whistler and moved to Rossland, and moved here for the altitude, not for biking or, there weren't any great trails here, certainly didn't seem any better than Whistler, but it was affordability, and primarily it was living at 3,500 feet, which was required for racing in the States in the Norba Nationals. So many of our races were over 6,500 feet, and I was still racing cross country then, and you just needed the hemoglobin. So I moved in with my neon bike outfits, and my toe clips finally changed to something called power straps. And I moved from Klein to Kona sponsorship and flew regularly in and out of Spokane Airport. And these are the early days. There's Huey descending on that ancient bike. And we would ride these Fort Shepherd hills, these sand hills. I don't think people ride that anymore, but I only did it once, and I thought it was totally ridiculous. But Huey and Donnie and all the other guys would probably do it much more regularly. And it didn't really fit in with the training I needed. We didn't have to race on slopes like that. And I just wanted a little review. We're coming to the end of the show right now about how things changed since I was here, from 12 trails in 2000 to 134 trails now, and Red Resort having a new official bike park, though they did try it 7 or 8 years ago. But I mean, things have really changed here, so it really is a mountain bike mecca. But when we moved here, it wasn't. Everyone was riding in barely Lycra and wool socks and sweatpants, and nobody was that serious. Well, they were serious riders, but I think it changed when World Champ came into town and people started to, maybe you'd have to tell me, feel a little bit better about mountain biking. And I just want to finish with this. The words "ticket to ride" came to me when I examined this photo of myself at 4 years old, and I saw this little girl who'd stepped out on her own porch, ready with gloves and purse, and something came to me that little purse had a ticket in it that was her ticket to ride. Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor if anyone has questions or comments about their experience with the 30 years of mountain bike that they've been a part of, because nobody here looks ultra young, so. I think everybody has experienced a pre-disc brake, maybe. But it's okay if not.
I have a question, because I enjoyed watching the bloopers a little bit, the fails. Did you have one particular fall that stands out among the rest?
Do you know one? Oh, was it the one where I did have one at the Mammoth Kamikaze, where because we were racing rims that were not designed for high-speed downhill, they were the same rims that you would climb a mountain on. You never do that now. So as we're racing down and cornering at high speed, the rim just separated, and so I crashed down on my left side. And I got back on the gondola to go back up, and I dared to look at my hand, and I had this huge open flap of skin that was there. And Tilly's saying, you can't do it. You gotta, DNF or something. But it was a downhill mania where you went back up and did another run with on the other side with the person. So I went back up and, tried to do it, and I had a broken wrist as well. So that was, you're determined and you got the adrenaline and you think, I can do this, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, but you were on wide world sport, some agony of defeat. They used to do that in those days, the crowd. Slow motion.
Yeah.
Wheel buckle.
Yeah, they showed it. I
In
can't
slow
find it.
motion, then you went through the air.
And into the bales.
So I did make wide world sport.
Yes.
Cindy, most sports have a elderly competition or sport, and are you involved in that?
Oh, for like a master's?
Yeah.
No. I don't mind being out of it. I put 8 years of my life, and it made me a kind of a very egocentric person that you just have to get so involved. I don't race for fun, I race to win. That's just my character. So if I'm going to be a racer, I'm going to focus on it. And Dilly would know that, when you're top of the level racer, nobody else is important. And there's only so much of that you want to do in your life. So I was quite happy to let that go. And I don't think I'm a master's racer that would just go, let's just go for the fun of it. I'd rather just ride here for the fun of it than go on a race. So I have a different mentality about that. And I'd like to not worry about my results and am I fit enough, and will I be ready on the day of, and all that stress I went through.
Thank you for that.
Some people maybe never got to where they wanted, so they're still going. But I certainly did achieve what I did, and I don't really feel like I need to, excel again. Yeah.
Just asking if you follow racing these days, like the downhill racing these days, and I find it, like I've been injured lots and crashed motocross and stuff, but it's gotten so crazy.
Yeah.
Like there's injuries coming up now, and I don't think many have died, but it's gotten to the point now where I watch these races on TV,
Yeah.
and these young guys are throwing themselves at the rocks hard, and it scares me.
I know.
Yeah, I've been there too, but it's just
Yeah.
that it's
Well,
a new sport, I think, and I think they should find ways of detuning it. It's going to cause.
It's going to maim people.
I don't know if any of you guys know Bodie Kuhn, but is he hurt now, or is he still like he was hurt for a while, and I don't know if he's still on like right now.
Well,
he's doing awesome, but
I never would have wanted my legacy to be where it is now in terms of Red Bull Rampage and the way people are pushing. Right? Yeah, but even the way people are pushing themselves. When Europe got involved in the World Cup and we started going over to Europe, the races that I did there, Cap d'Aille in particular in France, and a few of them in Switzerland, I'd never done a gap jump, that was bigger than this screen. I didn't know how to do it, and I hadn't done the gnarly stuff that they had us doing. And again, we didn't have the bikes for it, but the Euros really ramped up the entertainment value for spectators, which is what it's all about. They want to see crashes. And so it took me 2 years of that to witness, as a physiotherapist, very familiar with brain injury and spinal cord injury, to go, you know what, I've got 3 medals, this is not going in a direction I want, and nor is my bike, because they hadn't even evolved yet enough to make it safe. And it depended, if your sponsor had the stuff, good for you, but if they didn't, you had a rough ride. So nowadays it's a bit better because all the gear is the same, the equipment's pretty the same, but in that transition before 1994, you might not even have a full suspension bike and you're racing against the person that does. So I didn't see the future and I was quite happy to step out. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite trail here?
Do I? Big question. Well, it used to be Colonel Angus, but now it's all full of trees. But generally, little side trails like that are classical single track that aren't worn out, like it certainly isn't Snake or something like that. All the eroded trails, it's tough. This is a steep area and it's hard to keep the trails from not being eroded. So I kind of prefer the Columbia River Trail, Texas Point Trail, those kinds of, lots of exposure but nice level trails. Thank you.
I asked Billy about this before I was working with him.
Yeah.
Was Missy Giove as fast as you think she was? Did you ever race against her?
Of course we did. Yeah. She was in that eclectic group of the girls with her piranha. She always had the dried piranha. Yes. Oh, she won World Cups. Yeah, absolutely.
She was a handful.
Yeah, she was a handful. She was crazy, and she ended up going to prison, as you know.
I know, I followed her a little bit, and she was kind of hero level. She retired from sport and I know you get raced against her.
Well, the women in racing when I was there were either professionals like nurses and physios, accountant women that were just getting into it later in life in their 20s, or young BMXers, or I'm not sure what Missy did, but she was that other type that wasn't a professional, that just kind of came in with gusto and fearless.
Yeah, she loved it here, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was there a big split between cross-country riders and downhill riders at that time, or?
A split in what kind of way?
Just like you would choose a discipline, or you just
No,
do it all?
we did it all. And you were sponsored to do it all. You were forced to do it all. You had one bike.
There came a time you said that there was 2 types of bikes.
Yeah. About 1994, really, when I retired, it started to become more, you could actually say, no, I'm only a downhiller, because you just can't compete. The best I ever did was 12th in the world for cross country in Italy, and I mean, that sounds good now, but when you're used to winning something, to be 12th in a cross country is not very satisfying. So, all right, gang, thanks for listening and your interest.
No, we already did, but one more big round of applause. All right, if you've been to one of the speaker series before, you know the drill. Eat up all our snacks, take all the drinks so we don't have to put it away. Helps us out big time. Don't forget about those workshops, and wear your helmet. So, thanks so much for coming out, guys, and have a great evening.